Oh. Hello.
Oh my God.
Hi. Hello and welcome to HyperTalks 3.0 by Future Fonts. We're your hosts, Lizy Gershenson and Travis Cockle, the owners and creators of Future Fonts, coming to you live. Why is this not? There you go. From Future Fonts World Headquarters in beautiful Portland, Oregon. For those of you that are new, Future Fonts is a community font marketplace that sells fonts from type designers around the world, us included. We also run the Type Foundry Vectro Type. We are so excited to be putting this on for our third year. We've got a great lineup for you with a wide range of topics. I first want to thank all the speakers for all their time and energy they put into these talks. And thank you to the audience for tuning in and being interested in learning more about Type, the designers, and future fonts. It is really important and special to us, so thank you. For those of you joining us for the first time, HyperTalks is kind of like a mini conference, but future font style. We are a place for learning, growing, and experimentation and creative collaborations. The format is casual and short. Each speaker is given around 10 minutes with a loose brief to share what is exciting them today. You can see the full speaker agenda if you're short on time on our HyperTalks Eventbrite page. We've curated a group of people from the Future Fonts community that I think provides a nice balance of process, inspiration, and weirdness. Not all that different from our goals with releases on Future Fonts.
And also today, so last week we announced the launch of the alphabet magnets, which is kind of hard to see. These are magnets in the shape of Reiner by Philipp Neumeyer, and they come in pink and white. And you can find them on our website, goods.futurefonts.xyz. Yeah, they're magnets. They're super fun. And today we are going to have a little giveaway. If you would like to get your hands on a pack of these, all you need to do is, well, not all you need to do. We're going to do kind of like a raffle where if you purchase a license from any of the speakers today, Philipp is also speaking today as well. If you purchase a license from any of the speakers on Future Fonts, then we will kind of pull randomly two people and send you a bag of magnets, and we'll just reach out to you. And so you have to do that by the end of the day. So you could win your own little pack of Future Fonts magnets.
Yeah, we like to keep this free and accessible for all. So if you want to support the typefaces, the designers that are speaking today, the magnets, or spreading the word about Future Fonts, the event is also super helpful. The stream will be archived here on YouTube for anyone who wasn't able to make it today. Also, signing up for a Future Fonts newsletter will keep you in the loop about new releases, upcoming events. We've got an in-person party happening in August for the TypeCon opening party in Portland. And it also, signing up for our newsletter also helps us not rely on Instagram so much. So, okay, let's introduce our first speaker. All of that intro. Thanks for doing the live performance, Travis, of the synthesizer. Okay, first up, Giang Chan is streaming live from Hanoi. Giang is a Vietnamese type and graphic designer who pours love and care into every letter form. His work blends precision with emotion, where structure meets soul and practical design turns poetic. Giang is new to Future Fonts. When we saw his work, we were drawn to both his precise typeface design and marketing perspective. We are very thankful he is now a part of Future Fonts. Please give a warm welcome to our first speaker, Giang Chan.
Hey everyone, thanks Liz and Travis for these opportunities. I am so glad to be here, and such a great intro as well. Like I like the way you're pronouncing my name there. It's very, very cool. And okay, I'll start the talk. So you can see the flower, right? Well, this is just my waving. It's nothing. So as the intro said, I'm Dương, and I'm from Vietnam. Well, technically, I'm based in Hanoi. Hanoi is the center of Vietnam, and my name is pronounced as Dương. It's quite flat, and the pitching is from mid to high. It's not Zuong or Dương or Dương. I mean, it's okay. Well, Vietnamese is a tonal language, so with unmarked word like my name, it will sound quite plain. But if you add the diacritic to it, it will sound a little bit different. For example, if you add the grave, my name will be sound like from Dương to Dương, like, or at the acute it will be Dương, or at the underdot it will be Dương. I mean, it sound quite heavy, right? And you can clearly see the different tones there, and the diacritics will decide the tones, and it's quite similar to the way you draw or position it. I mean, Vietnamese is fun. And to increase the level of joy, today I want to share about our Vietnamese diacritics. And also, you don't need to able to speak Vietnamese in order to make the diacritics. So how awesome is that? In recent years, we have seen that a lot of foundries update their typeface with Vietnamese support, or well, they release new ones with them. And as a Vietnamese graphic designer, I'm definitely glad and grateful for this. But also, there are still haven't like still many haven't. Um, it's a it's a pain for our graphic designer when the lovely font choice can't make it to the final because of the lack of diacritics. I mean, I know it's hard to add something like this. It's an amount of work. So, but if you want to try, I mean, I can guide you through it through this talk. This is a screenshot from the Glyphs app. You can see that Vietnamese is a subcategory of the Latin tab. Well, because Vietnamese is a Latin-based language, thank God. And we share some common diacritics with other Latins, such as the acute, the grave, the tilde, the circumflex, and the brief. And we also have a hook above, three modified letter like the O horn, the U in the O horn, the D crow, and a dot below the vowel, which is called the underdot. But that's not just it. I mean, what makes Vietnamese so special is the stackable diacritics. This is the example. Well, this here's a very basic formula. When you have a circumflex and a grave, you have a circumflex with a grave. And if you have a brief with a, for example, hook above, you have a brief with a hook above. It's very simple, and you don't need to add them manually. This is quite easy now because of the way the app treat characters and accents just like a Lego brick. You just need the right anchor, and they will automate it for you. And also, this is just for glyphs. Recently, for RoboFonts, you have, I mean, Sharp Types have released their Omni Latin tools, which will help you with this. And with that grateful features, you will have a full set of characters, which has Vietnamese diacritics like these. And don't be panicked. This has been automated. And the next job you need to do is kerning and proofing. It's not gonna take long. I mean, just a few hours or days, months. But yeah, now your type has support Vietnamese. And here's the thing. I mean, my talk should end here, but I'm a local user. Well, technically, I'm a graphic designer by day, so I use fonts. And I've noticed some, I mean, it's not a problem. It's just we can improve it a little bit, of course, with learning and researching from others. So I'm collecting something here, and this should be the topic today. Like, is I want to talk more about the Vietnamese or Vietnamese diacritics. Bear with me, I can't cover it all, but I'll try to put some key things and put the source in the slide. But remember, this is just my suggestion, and it's very subtle. It's not a must. Oh, I see the G kerning there. Okay, so let's explain it a little bit. Here's our example with one layer of diacritics. They do not reach out too much of the vertical matrix here. I mean, some might fit in. But if you stack the diacritic on top of it, you will see that things might went off the cliff. So an example of use case here. The left side is an English paragraph, and the right is the Vietnamese translation of it. I hope you can see it clear on the screen. I mean, my point here is the leading of the Vietnamese paragraph is quite tight when you put it in the default setting, which is 120%. And as a graphic designer, our solution is to increase it into 140, for example. It might be a solution, but it's not going to work in all cases. This is a case. If I want a tight and even margin, the stacked tilde is, you can see that it's about to touch the top. It's quite dangerous. So we can move it down a little bit. At least the stacked grave can touch the top margin, or it can even down a little bit. But the thing is, when I turn off the grid, you can see that it's look uneven, especially for OCD designer. So what can we do? The staggered diacritics as seen here, you can see that the staggered one can be shorter or smaller a little bit, like 90%, for example, or you can skew it. And also, the same go with the acute, which the one who's stacked on the circumflex is much smaller compared to the original acute. And here's a comparison for you to see. I hope it's clear because the adjustment is subtle, but I believe that it's going to be a big impact. Same go with the uppercase, the shorter version of it can you can see it there. It can be smaller a little bit. Sometimes I use 95 or 90%. Or sometimes I have to skew it. And one more thing, with the automated feature, you will usually get the center alignment. Um, of course, depends on your anchor. So what I usually did is to move the tilde to the right a little bit to balance the white space between them. You can see it there. Of course, with the brief and the tilde, I like to move it further so it can feel expressive and quite like a hot pot with smoke. Yes, one more thing. The tilde on the A and the A, because of the width of the letter, is quite wide. So when you move the tilde to the I, it feels heavy. So you can make it narrow a little bit. I mean, this is optional. And I mean, it's hard to cover everything in just one talk. So here's a nice sword. And it's a website called Vietnamese Typography by Donnie Chung. It will tell you a lot of things. And of course, one more time, everything is not a must. It's just suggestion. And once again, my talk should end here. But I'm being greedy. And I want to share one more thing. And I hope I'm not going over time. Um, Here is the true style that you might want to hear when you heard my topic's name. So here's two example of my typeface. The one is open source and one is custom, and you can see that the diacritic is thinner compared to the characters below it or next to it. The reason is because from our considered Vietnamese style, this is quite historical. I mean, in the past we have sign paint. I mean, the type on the side back then was hand painted, and because of many reasons like economies or the style, I mean aesthetic, we like to make it thin on top of the very big and bold letters, so the sign will feel quite impactful. And I like how this I mean, a lot of type designer in Vietnam, they try to mimic this style and they bring it to the typeface, and of course they only suitable for display use. One cool example is from Florian Caston. This is a typeface called Screamer. You can see the diacritic is quite wide there, but it's very thin, and I mean it's look very expressive and cool. And also, this is from DGR, David Jonathan Ross. You can see that he treat his diacritics very, very cool there. I mean, cool concept. And I mean, the concept of this typeface is everything in a square. And I hope I'm translating right. And one more example is from Acid Grotesk from Fox Studio. This is a version of their typeface. I mean, the diacritic is quite thin there. They use the variable feature to make the. I mean, they have a normal version of diacritics, but with variable, they can add this thinner stroke. You can see here. that's just some example for you to know that you can play around with the diacritic a little bit, of course, for display use only. And I know that diacritics can be hard, but it can also be fun. Like DGR, he find his joy when he drawing diacritics. I mean, there's a lot of way to make it scream. I mean, and so when I try it, I mean, just bear with me. And if you have problem, you can contact me. I mean, I'm willing to help. Or here's are some other links from other Vietnamese type designer. You can contact them. You can ask them. They are available and they are willing to help. I mean, we all want to make Vietnamese visual appealing. And that's the end of my talk. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Zong, for your tips, resources, inspiration. Is there a big type design community in Hanoi?
Well, it's quite small.
Oh.
I mean, there's not much type designer in Vietnam in general. I mean, not just in Hanoi. Mostly they are in Ho Chi Minh City, or you can call it Saigon. Yeah.
Cool. That's great to know. Well, thank you so much for sharing. We appreciate your talk and all of the advice and inspiration you provided.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Zong.
thank you for having me.
Have a nice night. He's streaming in from late. I think it's what, 10 p.m. or 11?
It's actually 12.
12.
But it's
Thank
okay.
you
I mean,
so
still
much.
early.
I know you said you stay up late, so youth these days. So thank you again for all of the all of the tips, resources, and inspiration. Appreciate it. Our next guest, or our next speaker, Namrata Goyal, calling from Alwar, Rajasthan, India. Namrata has been part of Future Fonts for a couple years now. Her typefaces and skills are next level, and we have come to be internet friends, fans, and supporters from afar. Namrata is a type designer and typography consultant based in India. She has been part of teams working on commissioned font suites, which include type design for Indic and Latin scripts. She currently works as a team member at Universal Thirst while also publishing her independent font projects on Future Fonts. Additionally, she teaches type design workshops and modules at design schools and studios both in India and overseas, and collects ceramics and hoards books. Hi, Namrata. Welcome.
Hello. Thanks for the lovely intro. Okay, 10 minutes. So I'm going to jump right into the presentation, which I'm honest, it's a peek inside my head, or a ramble, if you may, of some thoughts that I've had for some time. And it's great that now I get to pile these on to other people as well. So as creative people, I think we look at the world a little bit differently, almost as if we are analyzing things at all times and constantly thinking in some way or the other. And we never know when inspiration will strike. So I am always finding letter shapes and random objects around me in car tail lights and whatnot. But yeah, let's get into the presentation, shall we? Okay, so ever since COVID, I've been living in my ancestral home with my parents, and here every day can be a new adventure. This home is old, and there are sections of the house that I haven't even seen yet because either they're locked, or they're falling apart, or they're locked because they're falling apart. But over time, like the front of the house you see in this picture, it was renovated about 2 years ago. And when it was being cleaned out, they saw that it had a tiny storage room of sorts in the back. And that had a relatively small door. So we assumed it would be a cupboard, but it led to a room. And that room was a real treasure trove. Like, it was filled with books and ephemera of all sorts. And this was also used as like an outhouse, or kind of like a home office, by like clerks and scribes that would keep my great grandfather's accounts. So like under a table in this room, we found all of these manuscripts that are at least 100 years old, if not more. I found one that was dated 1804. So that's almost like, like 120 years old now. Yeah, now this talk cannot go beyond 10 minutes today. So I have cut the manuscripts down to individual pages, and they will be from a mix of sources, these pages, not from the same manuscript, and I'll share what my inspiration is on each page. For example, I admire the blockiness of the writing here. Most classical Devanagari types, this is all in Devanagari, by the way. Most classical Devanagari types take inspiration from handwritten texts and calligraphy, but somehow this blockiness tends to disappear. Within this page, let's observe a few characters, starting with the K, which is the first of the consonants in Devanagari, and some of the written variants that I found in this manuscript and combinations. A closer look here to the highlighted characters. And also like other consonants that I've highlighted in the manuscript. And I put it together in like an alphabet chart to kind of look at everything together. But I want to draw something that will maintain the blockiness. So I suppose there have to be like more straights than curves. But with regards to blockiness and to some extent simplified shapes, I was also reminded of another bit of inspiration from a few years ago. This was text carved and set using the stone inlay technique, and it is quite common in many historical landmarks in India, probably also elsewhere. But basically, the shapes are first carved in the marble and then filled in with granite. And I see some similarity in the manuscripts and these images. Of course, tools affect the writing. And like if I see samples from the inlay work in comparison to the manuscript writing, they can be a little bit blockier, but overall, I think the two are pretty close. This was a quick exploration I did of the characters from the images of the stone writing and inlay letters. And I called it Castello Sans just because it came from a castle. But I have compared the shapes with the classical Devanagari typeface here, ITF Devanagari, which is based on broad nib pen writing. And somewhere, of course, you can see that I have tried to stay closer to the sources as compared to ITF Devanagari, which is of course more stylized and constructed. But then I also added the glyph scans from the manuscripts to the mix. So you can see the manuscripts and the inlay lettering derived characters. They're quite similar. And I think of these styles together will give me a result that's kind of more holistic. Further, in terms of like features and characters of the font, it might be interesting to think typographically and include inspiration from the following slides and ingenuity of the scribes, like the typographical inspiration in the tables, diagrams, and text on a path. Or think about tabular alignment in Devanagari numerals and perhaps also to set, I don't know. Or how can text on a path be, like the setting be made neater in Devanagari set? Writing this way would need some adjustments like moving the page or turning the writer's wrist. But can these results be replicated digitally? And should it be in this font? Personally, like as a side note, on the right manuscript, I really like the curve. And I'm sure if we were to replicate this digitally, it would require some form of optimization to the characters and skewing. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I've not tried it yet. But going on to the font family expansion and styles, if the text version is blocky and simplified, do we need a display style? One inspired by this page with a bouncier handwriting, with a bouncier writing, and definitely more flair to it, or does it need flourishes and long tail-like descenders? I think that this should be the display's features. Like I would focus on a funky Shiro headline and maybe flairish elements. Or perhaps the display should be a stencil to make it stand out a little bit more compared to the text. This was another project I'd started a while ago, inspired by calligraphy and experimental writing. I'm forcing it probably, but maybe there can be a middle ground between the two. over the time working as a type designer, I have understood why sometimes it takes designers years and years to complete a typeface. We wait for all the pieces to fit and come together to complete the picture. Okay, ornaments. Does cake need icing? Ornamentation, do we need this? And borders, sorry. This is just one page out of many that I found. And from what I found, there were many examples of both like simple and complicatedly ornamental borders. And one must do justice to this beauty, if you ask me. Borders. But basically, this material has given me some grounding and references of the design being put to use and what makes its applications desirable, but also lack of enough modern Devanagari types that have research going beyond the categorization of classical types or playful display types based on grungy lettering or ornamented typefaces based on sign painters' work. So definitely, I think all the material that I've kind of been seeing for the last 3 years since we opened that room, it's given me a lot to think about. But yes, this should be a font, and that was my pitch. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Namrata. Just sharing some of your inspiration and digging into how you're thinking about just your version and your interpretation of the typeface is really interesting. So thank you for sharing and kind of giving us a glimpse into where your headspace and how you approach a project is. Appreciate it. And thank you for doing this. Streaming in. Okay. So our next speaker is Pauline Fourest of Spaghetti Type. She's streaming in from The Hague in the Netherlands. Pauline always offers a unique perspective in her letter forms and brings such a fun approach to projects. We were fortunate enough to even work with her firsthand on a client project we had where she gave a fresh eye with new directions, and she did not disappoint. We also got to meet her in person at The Hague, spending a beautiful day with her and a bunch of friends, rock climbing, eating, exploring. Pauline is a French freelance type designer, even though right now she's living in The Hague because she went to school at the Royal Academy. She graduated from Type Media in 2024 and specializes in custom and retail fonts, logos, lettering, and illustrations. Please welcome Pauline from Spaghetti Type.
Hello, thank you for having me. Ready to cook, Lizy?
Hi, my name is Pauline. I'm a type designer and I run Spaghetti Type on feature phones. This is my journey. 2018. I just graduated from Type and I was working at a Foundry in Paris. Then I got a mail from James Edmondson because he was looking for new type designers to join feature phones, and I got recommended by Quentin Schmerber, who was a former classmate of mine at Type. And James was saying, "Hello, I really like your work. Do you have any fonts to release? If not, I really like those 3 Instagram posts you made, and I really like Jibula." Jibula was a logotype that I made for music events where you never knew what kind of music you would listen to. I took that idea and I applied it to letters. With Jibula, you never know what kind of shapes you're gonna get. And I accepted James' offer because first, when James Edmondson asks you something, you say yes. And secondly, I would have never imagined that feature fonts would become what it is now. Back then, we didn't have any foundry or platform that would release non-finished typefaces. So I worked on Jibula and I released the first version of it. This is where the problem started, because when you release a font that is not done, people start giving reviews, comments, ask for more features, ask for more alternates. And all of those informations, while I was in the middle of my process, was overwhelming, so I panicked. Another problem, I got dismissed from the foundry where I was working at, so I needed to pay my rent. I started doing odd jobs. I started as a sales assistant and I was selling moisturizers and perfumes, and I was also a head masseuse. Later, I became an assistant manager, later an Apple manager, where I was running an Apple shop and managing a team about selling iPhones and MacBooks every day. I became drained and exhausted, and I couldn't do type design anymore. I lost all my motivations, and type design just became a hobby. That was a shit situation. So I talked about it to a friend, and that friend told me, "You don't understand anything, because design is not about keeping things in the drawer. Design is about sharing things to people. Otherwise, it's not design, it's pre-design." And that advice blew my mind. From that moment, I decided to start everything all over again, put things together, and work on type design as my main priority. So on lunch breaks, evenings, night, weekends, any time off, I would work on Jibula. Secondly, I decided to do things legitimately, and I started my own company, Spaghetype. Thirdly, I even rented a very expensive desk in a shared office with architects so I could have my space and be surrounded by creative people, inspiring people. Thanks to all that, I finished Jibula in 6 months when I couldn't do it for a year and a half. And finally, I could move on and think about new typefaces. Later, I released Mayonnaise about fast food, Scorpione about broadleaf calligraphy, Monstera about tropical plants. I applied to Type Media, I got in, I graduated, and I released later Pétanque about sports balls. Nowadays, I'm a type designer and an illustrator. I have amazing fancy news. I see my typefaces on book covers and exhibitions and skincare brands. What do I get from all that journey? I learned that you can't please everyone. At some point you need to make decisions, stick to it, do what you gotta do, and if you create something, show it to friends, family, and you. Thank you for listening, and see you soon.
Pauline, thank you so much. And I love the cooking reference. That was amazing.
Thank you. Can I just thank all the people that helped me for this video?
Of course.
All right. Thank you, Caterina, Julien, Marion, Manon, Mylène, Andrea, Fabio, Mint, Ricky, Ellie, Marilou. Thank you, James. Thank you, Lizy. Thank you, Travis. And thank you, Stefan, for your comments. It made me panic, but it was the best. Thank you.
You did awesome. Those videos are not easy to do. I know. So thank you so much, Pauline. Our next speakers are a duo. They run and own the studio Réplica. They caught our eye because they were just doing one cool project after another using future fonts and a lot of branding and environmental stuff. And we were just like, we want to learn more. And so we had a call with them and then invited them to do HyperTalks. So Réplica explores the intersection. Let me give them a brief intro. Réplica explores the intersections of design, communication, research, and media through overlapping creative practice. Camilo and Juan Pablo are designers, creative directors, and founders of Réplica Studio. Originally from Colombia, they're now based in Barcelona and Amsterdam, respectively, where they both lead studio and personal projects. So please welcome Juan and Camilo. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Super nice. Can you see our screen now? I think so, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you, Travis and Lizy, for inviting us. This is Camilo and Juan Pablo. We're super excited to be part of this talk and to listen to so many wonderful people. This is us. We don't have many pictures of ourselves, so it's quite a task to get photos of of us in the same space. But just so you know, we're not type designers. We wish we were, but I guess we're just type obsessed. We love type in general. 14 Cañonazos is, so you know, it's an ongoing series of albums that have been released in Colombia since 1961 by a mythical label called Discos Fuentes. It's a legendary Colombian label. And each edition features 14 biggest hits of the year. So like the 14 like blasts, like the cañonazos. And it was usually wrapped around a cover, like a very sexist cover, but it was like the 14 hits that you had to listen in a year. And these albums were a staple in Christmas parties, and most families had like at least a couple of editions in their houses. And basically, what we're going to do is that we're going to follow this format, but instead of songs, we're going to show you 14 albums that we used as part of a research that we did for a visual identity that we designed recently for a music venue in Miami called Say Say. This music venue basically is just a place for music and concerts, and its name comes from a word in Iku, that is the language spoken by the Arahuaco people in the indigenous community of the Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta in Colombia, and it means happiness. So what we wanted to explore was an identity that could relate it to happiness, but also approach it in a different way that could be basically that could exemplify a bit like this Latin American vibe. We initially approached it in a way that we could find like the means to gather different things from what a Latin American sound could be represented visually, and from there it just like kind of took off.
So we both grew up in Colombia, in Bogotá and Manizales, raised in the 90s and the 2000s, and our education was grounded in European and American design principles, but our narratives principles, I mean, our narratives, visual culture, and most of our pop references are like salpicón, we call it in Spanish. It's like a mashup of everything, right? Like global North influences, meeting with our local realities, with our Latin American influences as well. So that's what kind of nurture all this process and all this project. And especially also us as a remote studio, we bring this philosophy not only into our projects, but also to the designers, to clients that we work with. We really love a dynamic that it often leads a unique and interesting results, all that mix.
Picture this: you're in your school bus after school, you're destroyed, you're dead, and you're riding on the school bus, and the driver is blasting a vallenato from Patricia Teran that basically the chorus goes like this: what did I come to know him, sir, when his whole life already belongs to her? If I had met him first, I surely would have been his woman. This is a translation from ChatGPT, but you can listen to the song. And imagine kids are screaming in the back, and you're headbanging Ride the Lightning from Metallica on your Discman. And basically, this was us when we were kids and going to school. So basically, we're kind of a mashup. So when we began to design Say Say, we kind of wanted to bring that duality into the visual identity, like dig into our musical references that we grew up with, and basically like the music that our parents forced us to listen to when we were going on road trips, the tracks that were playing, blasting on a speaker when you pass by the supermarket. You've been to Latin America, it can be loud in terms of like the presence of sounds and music. Also, for example, like the narrator of a football match playing a game after Colombia scored a goal. So we wanted this visual parranda, which is basically like a celebration, like a massive celebration, kind of by embracing and understanding our own identities. When we grew up, it was the era of CDs. Like vinyls were like a long dead technology. We grew up in CDs and mixtapes from the radio. So most of our visual like narratives, in a way, come from these vinyls and these albums that our parents had. It's funny because they look like super antiques at the time. Nowadays, it's a completely different thing. But when we started to collect all these covers for Say Say, we noticed like certain visual patterns, but also we kind of reconciliated with the idea of who we're and who we are. And the visual patterns that we recognized are basically like bold imagery, very expressive typography, and vibrant colors. And then we thought, okay, how can we bring this to Say Say?
Exactly. And so any limitations of analog process were met with creative solutions. And we thought it would be exciting to follow a similar workflow. So we really admire how resourceful designers had to be in that era, in that moment, working with what they had and infusing it with just that unmistakable Latin flavor, Latin sabor. No? We believe, yeah, back then, type played a huge role in setting the vibe of the soul of an album, of an artist, all this design of all these covers. So it was really descriptive, playful, full of personality, and that's all the soul and the spirit that we want to take to Say as well?
We decided to follow that path. So what if we establish ourselves certain constraints and limitations in the way we design? So design like we had like a letterpress. So what if we only have like a certain number of typefaces that we can use for each poster or for each flyer? What if we only have like a certain image, some sort of clip art, and we can only use certain kind of colors because, I don't know, there's certain limitations for print. And then what we did was create this system that we could just play around with that was a bit modular, and that gave us a lot of liberty to do and explore things, but also it kind of freed us in the sense that we didn't have to make many decisions per item that we are designing for Say. And it's pretty interesting because it kind of lets you go, no? So we're kind of referencing the past, but also the way we approach it has become some sort of therapy. So in a way, this project has made us rethink our own role as designers. How do we embrace like our roles inside a project? And the result was like this idea of like a full-on psychotropics meets a colorful typographic parranda. And it's pretty interesting. We've been using a lot of open source typefaces, also with typefaces that push boundaries a bit. For example, the type that we use for the logo and for the main wordmark is the Pimpit by Bibi Bourreau, that is a French designer that is amazing. And it's like this very quirky, athletic, like amphetamine, exaggerated typeface that we use. And we kind of blend it with other like these reinterpretations of old school wood type, or for example this one that we see here by Other Work Collective, the one that we use for the presentation and the Los Mirlos poster, that is it's called Blimp, and it's like this very puffy variable font that can like be like super like I don't know, it can gain like a lot of weight, and it's pretty interesting. Also like the wood type that we've used that can be hyper condensed or widely expanded. Sometimes it has like very funky kerning. So one of the things that we've discovered with this project is that we're embracing kind of the error, because we know that there are things that are off, but we don't really care, and that's nice. Also in terms of color, like we don't look for legibility sometimes, we just want like very striking and funky color combinations. And the thing is that designers and type designers in general, we're constantly looking like backward and forward, no? We're rediscovering things, we're bringing it back, we're interpreting things, shapes from the past, we're kind of establishing new narratives. And the thing that we find beautiful about Say is that it became a kind of dialogue, a dialogue across time, but also a very therapeutical dialogue for us that are both from Colombia, but we're living like very far away. And we did the same, like our approach to design. We wanted something that is very similar to the way that we experience music and memory. So basically we're bouncing between rabbit holes and nostalgia. It's just a mix of that. So imagine that you're listening to Vallenato on the school bus, but you're also listening to Metallica Ride the Lightning on your headphones. And we've done that with like all the flyers and everything that we keep on doing for Say. But the truth is, and looking through these sleeve covers that you're seeing, our brains are a parranda, you know, like we grew up listening to all these different variations and genres of music, and we can easily shift from metal to bolero to shoegaze to indie to electronic. We can shift through genres so easily and so quickly. So we thought, okay, why don't we bring this to our work? So we're constantly exploring who we are, where we come from, and we kind of throw that into the blender and see what comes out.
So we understand our Colombianidad, that means our Colombian identity, while creating projects that open local stories to global design. That's something that we love to say every time. And we understand it also by going back and reflect on who we are while we're living abroad. It's really important. Also, because living abroad also has given us a chance to look back and reflect on who we are, what shaped us, and how that cultural lens naturally finds its way into our work. It's a mix of distance and closeness that help us to see our roots more clearly and express them with intention, with really, really heavy intention.
And lastly, our studio is basically on our obsessions. We just go back and forth, and we basically like we have done in this talk. So we go back and forth constantly, very frantically sometimes. And this is Say. Hope you can manage to go to Miami and see a concert one day. we haven't been there yet, but we hope to go soon.
Yes.
And lastly, we're mega fans of all the type designers that are present today. So it's an honor to be here. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you so much, Camilo and Juan Pablo. That was really inspiring. I loved all the albums. We just got our first record player, and so I don't know.
It's
like
a
not
double-edged sword. Yeah.
Not listening to it on the phone and like listening to like collective albums together and like being inspired by the artwork, I feel like is really calming my nerves these days. And so just seeing now we were taking notes of like adding these all to our Discogs collection. So thank you for sharing. And like, again, it's also really interesting to see like the previous speakers were type designers and you're more focused on graphic design and branding, and just like how everyone kind of plays with each other's work and the bouncing back and forth between type designer and graphic designer, and how valuable both perspectives and where people's are coming from is really interesting. So yeah, thank you for sharing that and introducing me. I don't know about my audience to all of the album
Thank you, Lizy.
And music. Thank you.
Thank you, Lizy.
Keep up all the great work with the design. Really love your work. Thank you.
Will do. Thank you.
Okay. Next. Who do we have next? Oh, where's my thing? Philipp Neumeyer of Rudiger from Berlin, Germany is streaming in next. Philipp has been on Future Fonts since the beginning. We really love his work with its unique perspective and useful designs. They're really great for editorial. In addition to Future Fonts, we released his fonts Reiner on our personal Foundry Vectra. We liked it so much. And the magnets are in Reiner too. We also enjoyed hanging out with Philipp a lot in Berlin when we were there. Not this last fall, but the previous fall? It was last fall. I don't know. Life's going quick. Rudiger is a type foundry is a Berlin-based independent type practice run by Philipp Neumeyer. Its pursuit in form of retail and custom typefaces can be understood as a quest for strangeness that lingers within the familiar, something felt rather than measured. Feels very parallel to when you meet Philipp and hang out with him. So without further ado, Philipp. Oh, this is a video.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Philipp is on a train right now. He couldn't be here, but he put together a nice little video for us.
Welcome, Philipp's video.
Welcome, dear collective consciousness. I am your host, Philipp Neumeyer, head of global entanglements here at Rudiger Studios, and this is Trivial Type Time. On this episode, I want to talk about one of the most divisive issues facing our world today, proportional typewriters. My story starts in May 2022 during a lovely trip to Switzerland, visiting my dear friend, Loris Olivier. He gave me a copy of Footnotes A with the article Typewriter Typefaces by Alan Bartram. This article introduced me to the concept of typewriters with proportional spacing, which happened only 82 years after IBM introduced it to the market. As per usual, I was rather late to the party. While a monospace typewriter stuffs every letter irrespective of its natural width into the same space, a proportional typewriter breaks down the space into multiple spaces for the letter's natural widths to spread or withdraw. The typical proportional typewriter spaces are broken down as follows. All lowercase characters are 3 units, except F, I, J, L, T, who are 2 units, W is 4 units, and M is 5 units. All uppercase characters are 4 units, except I, which is 2 units, J and S are 3 units, and M and W are 5 units. All figures and fractions are 3 units, parenthesis, apostrophe, semicolon, and colon are 2 units. Period, comma, asterisk, equal, plus minus, slash, double quotation marks, $, hyphen, and underscore are 3 units. And sterling, ampersand, percent, and question mark are 4 units. Similar to me, Adrian Frutiger was struck by the magic of a proportional typewriter when he was introduced to the IBM Selectric Composer in the mid-1960s. Oh, we are so alike, Adrian and me. Frutiger was asked to adapt his Univer to the golf ball typewriter. Since people had more time and money and less social media back then, Frutiger created his own studies in terms of breaking down characters into units. The Selectric Composer broke down letters into 9 units. These 7 were favored by Frutiger for his Univer. Nonetheless, IBM made him adapt Univer to the already established breakdown of characters. While all of this might have been a late discovery for me in the grand scheme of time, it was right on time project-wise. My typeface, Elmer Mono, was due to be published at the end of the year, and you know, for the off chance that I'm not going to live forever, I'd better do it now. So, fascinated by the idea of playing pretend. I wanted to make Elmer proportional without actually making a proportional typeface out of it. At this point, I would like to tell you about my elaborate tests of spaces and widths and whatnot, but in the end, I'm a simple man of a few cares in the world, and I want to keep it that way, so I decided to go with the most simple version. I broke down all my letters into 3 different spaces. Keep in mind that's just 1 less than the typical proportional typewriter. I cut off unnecessary serifs and de-squeezed a couple of letters. While most letter retained the mono width, the naturally narrow ones were cut in half, and the wider ones gained half a unit. Ultimately, due to the size of the character set, there were quite some adaptations, but the outcome felt so distinctly different from the origin that I decided to release it separately and not as a never-to-be-seen-again stylistic set. Elmer Trio was born. I fell in love with its unique character of being more consistent than its monospaced ancestor, but keeping some of its awkward technicality. As time moved forward, as it usually does, the idea of unitizing letters kept lingering in my mind. Eventually, I was able to talk someone that asked me to design the title for their lovely clay stop-motion short film into designing their credits as well. The film, or how you like to say movie, is awkward and raw and lovely and ill-fitting and powerful. So human and yet very abstract. I wanted the type to represent that as well. One way of translating the imperfections and ill-fitting was choosing a tight-fitting system like a monospace, but breaking it like a proportional typewriter, or a unit-based typeface, like these godless pagans call it. In lieu of inventing something new, I just copied myself. Once more, I divided all the letters into 3 widths. Pretty much everything is built around the circular lowercase o that represents 2 units. Most upper and lowercase letters fit into these 2 units. The more narrow characters are 1 unit, and wider characters, well, you know the drill. The uppercase O keeps the circular form of the lowercase relative and enjoys all 3 units. Similar to Elmer Mono, it works well in text, but obviously exudes some technical awkwardness. Needless to say, a proportional typewriter works perfectly well for this kind of credit design. But let's not stop here. Back in 2018, I started this design that just went nowhere. Over the years, I kept tinkering with it and tried to find something that I like. What happens when I add some serifs here and there? Does Cyrillic work for it? How about italics? Maybe something more extreme. Monospaced? Anyone? Do different widths make it interesting? As soon as I saw this, the wido mixed with not yet expanded characters, I think I have found what I was looking for. I wanted to mix these different widths. And while testing, I quickly ended up in a unit-based design, O doubles H doubles I. I broke down all letters into these 4 different widths and made some maybe unusual decisions. Not all of them might be rational, but it is what it is. The outcome is called Repose Quad. It's weird, it's unit-based, it's definitely different, it's something. Is this a proportional typewriter? I don't know how to name it, and who cares? I think this is fun. Well, after these quickly described explorations, there's still a lot to delve into. For now, my explorations were limited to the maybe brutal dimensions, and not so much inside the finely tuned, unit-based realms of proportionality. Maybe that is worth exploring at some point. Maybe not. Just keep in mind, you can't bury someone that came from dirt. Okay, fuckers, that's it for today. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Okay, I'm speechless. That was very Philip. Even though David Attenborough was, or not really David Attenborough, but whoever that was voicing it, I heard Philip throughout the whole thing. That was amazing. Thank you, Philip. Epic. So our next guests, our next speakers are Diana Ovezea and Barbara Bigosińska of Blast Foundry, streaming in from the Netherlands. Diana and Barbara are pros. The two of them are running a top-notch Type Foundry Blast, and I can't wait to see how it grows. We were lucky to spend a gorgeous day at the beach with them in Amsterdam. Diana and Barbara are the duo behind Blast Foundry, a type design studio working with creative agencies and foundries around the world. From custom fonts to retail families, they're all about building systems with clarity, energy, and a strong sense of purpose. I can't wait to see how they share a little bit of their process with us today. Thank you. Welcome.
Hi.
We don't
Hello.
see. We don't see you.
That's weird.
We see
Can
the
you
screen
hear it?
share,
Oh,
but your video. Oh,
that
infinity,
sucks.
infinity and beyond.
Oh. But you'll have to do without our faces, I
Oh
think. I need
no!
to turn off. Can we do
It
this?
worked yesterday.
It did. Can I? Is it important to see our faces, or else we can just go on?
Come on.
Hold on a second. I'll
That's
relog
why
it.
I traveled the whole way.
Barbara went all the way to Diana's house to do this together side by side.
Should I play
So-
another song?
I don't know. That video was not working well when I was trying to film it.
Oh, there they are.
There they are. Beautiful. Thank you.
Hi.
Perfect.
Okay, here we go.
Here we go. First of all, thank you for such a lovely introduction, Lizy. I was supposed to do a little introduction, but now you took it all out of my hands, so I will do a very short version. We are based both in Netherlands. We are the Blast Foundry, and we are based in two cities, Den Haag and Zwolle. And today we are in Zwolle, where Diana runs the office. And you probably know some of our work from our website, Instagram, or Future Font. However, today we would like to show the project that we haven't spoken much about, and it is a very different project to all other ones that we are doing, especially because it is done for a good cause. And we are, actually the most proud of it. It's like, yeah,
Of all of our projects.
of all of our projects, and this is the biggest projects we've done as a Type Foundry together. So literally not working for someone else. And I will pass the mic to Diana. She will walk you through the details.
Great. First, maybe a little bit of context. Thank you. The Big Issue, for those who don't know, is a UK-based street newspaper that was founded in 1991. It helps people who are homeless or poor to earn an income by selling the magazine and hence reintegrate into society and rebuild their lives. You could say it gives a voice to the people who are often unheard. And here you can see how the cover and the typography look like around 2020. And as the magazine approached its 30th anniversary, Pentagram partner Matt Willey was assigned or tasked to redesign the whole cover. And he had this clear vision that the letters needed to be bigger and bolder so they could be seen from across the street so that they could really, truly make an impact. And that's when we joined the project. Together with Matt, we created a custom ultra heavy Grotesk called Big Issue Fat. And you can see what a big impact it had on the whole cover. This was just one weight, but it kind of set the tone for the whole new identity. And it was massive. You could see it from across the street, even when it was printed on the building, as you can see here. And people really liked it. And a year later, the Big Issues art director, Mark Neal, reached out to us to expand the cover type into a full-blown family. And at that point, the Big Issue fat that we had drawn already was being used on the website logo and in some headlines, but everything else across was pretty much still undefined. And his goal was to create a type system that could bring consistency across print and digital and to serve the magazine with having enough flexibility for years to come. The first thing that we did was to build a prototype, because we didn't know how heavy, how wide, how narrow, how everything. Marky said he needed everything. So we provided him with a very quickly drawn Grotesk, just A to Z. And he got to choose between the very narrowest and very widest, and light and black, just so that he could truly define what is needed for the magazine so that it could truly be a custom system that would work for him. This helped to figure out, what the standard, the wide, the extra wide would be. And the next step was just after that was to focus on the details. Once we got the structure, we were shaping the letter forms. We looked at historical UK specimens like Caslin, Miller and Richard and Stevenson Blake. And we wanted to ground the design in UK history a little bit if we could. There's, of course, a lot more richer history of grotesques in other countries, but we did our best to find it from the UK. At the end, we explored 3 stylistic directions. Option 1 had a lower contrast, humanist influences, and an overall modern appearance. Then option 2 had a higher contrast. It had this wedge spurs and an overall, we felt, more retro grotesque vibe. And then option 3 was a little bit more outspoken. It featured some dramatic curled details in the T and Q and some other letters, and these tapered outstrokes that you can see a little bit on the C and A. Of course, the final direction sat somewhere in between, balancing between clarity and character, as you usually have with clients. Like, there's nowhere, not any time that one of the options will be just fine. So, of course, we would like to show you the next step that happened then, because one prototype usually leads to another prototype. And if all goes well, I should be able to show you here what we sent to them the first time. You had the width and the weight, and he could just select different values here for us to define what should be the regular, the bold, the light, how wide, how narrow, and all of that. And then the second prototype, after we zoomed in on the details, was about the spurs, because we were undecided how spurry the spurs should be. So then you had like a weight axis still, and then you had a spurs axis that could make the spurs narrower and wider. And of course, we pushed it way further than one would otherwise, because you always want to overshoot when you're experimenting in order to make sure that you went far enough to have tested the whole range and come up with a good solution. With that said, we built, like when he decided on how spurry the typeface should be, and he was really good with giving feedback, we built a strong and expressive display subfamily in a standard width, and then a wide and an extra wide. And later we added narrow and of course italics too, but I'll get to that after. Each one of the widths has 6 weights. That's all they needed at the time, they said. And italics, it has alternates, of course, because even though Mark was able to make choices, he also thought like, oh, we should have this for another time. Maybe this would be good for this and this edition of this and that, because they have a lot of different content, and it really helps to have alternates. Also, we were going to release this commercially, so of course we kept all the alternates that we could. We also have thin punctuation alternates, like these parentheses and braces, and an extra set of accents that are thin in order to make headlines stand out better. During about halfway into designing this, we already were thinking, okay, there needs to be a text subfamily. We have been designing the display typeface so far. How can the text be different? And we didn't want to move too far away from the design. So what we did is, in order to increase readability, we went with a wider spacing by default, tall ascenders, and a bit more open apertures. The spurs were sharper. And of course, we increased the contrast a little bit in the text bolder weights in order to open up the counters. And that would help with legibility at small size. This is, again, an overview of the two. You can see they're not too different, but the S and A have a little bit more open apertures, and the spacing is different. The narrow subfamily actually started off as a 1 commissioned weight, but since we were already deep into the project and we wanted to make a big, good family that would serve for a long time, we decided to expand it into a full set of 6 weights and later italics too. It includes the same features as the display styles. It's part of the display suite, as you could say. It has alternates, hairline punctuation, arrows, and everything else that's in our normal display fonts. Then, of course, all the styles came with italics, but we thought, again, how can we make it more like editorial? We chose for a slant of 12 degrees, which is a little bit more than Grotesks usually have. Usually it's about 10 degrees, like between 9 and 11. We just went 1 degree more. But we thought for the narrow family, we can go a bit more dramatic. So we slanted it at 18 degrees. We like how dynamic it looked, and I thought some layouts could benefit from that. I always keep imagining it being used for football and for gyms, right? So that would be really cool to see one day.
For coffee.
Fast coffee. I would like that. Stage 7, testing and production. After all the design and testing, we ended up with a grand total of 60 styles, and plus 1 more because Big Issue Fat was still there, and it was by then considered legacy, and it didn't have lowercase, so we added lowercase to it and everything else. So we have 61 styles in total, multiple widths and weights, italics, and everything else that goes with it. Now, the most important part for us is the part where we give back. From the start, this was just a little bit more than just a design project for us. We pledged in our contract initially already to donate 10% of all the proceeds that we get from selling this font, because we were going to release it commercially in order to keep the cost low for Big Issue. We pledged to donate 10% back of all the proceeds back to the Big Issue cause. It felt important to us to give back to this community that inspired the work. And of course, you must be curious, what did they do with the font? How is it going? Well, we delivered the fonts about, well, somewhere last year, and it's been slowly rolling out. But as with every publication, it takes a while to implement things across the board. So the Big Issue team is still in the process of implementing this whole type system, as they decided to go for a much bigger editorial or brand refresh than we initially thought they would, which is great, but that means we have to wait a little bit longer for them to bring it out into the world. We can already see a little bit of it from time to time on the new covers. And, for around Christmas, they did a special edition where they used it like this, which we thought worked really nicely together with a serif that they use inside the publication. It looks very clean. And of course, on the street, you can see it. The cover is still the cover, and there's always more type on the cover. That's now the Big Issue typeface. So that's great. But we couldn't wait to release it. We thought, let's just release it already because we want to share it with the world. We decided to release the fonts early, put them in designers' hands. And for this, we worked with Marie Santi from Paris. She's our graphic designer extraordinaire in-house, to show what this typeface could do. And what you're seeing here is some fictional spreads of how the typeface could work and what it could do in real life. We designed these to show the potential of the system. And yes, the mock-ups are fictional, but the fonts are real and they're available now. You can find them, Big Issue and Big Issue text on our website, Blast Foundry. And you can just drop us an email to get full trials if you are a design studio.
And it would be a crime not to mention all of the good people that helped us a lot while working on this giant project, because it's not like two of us did 100% of work. So first of all, Laura Styrkova used to be our intern at the time, and she did the historical research part. Thank you, Laura. Laura is now also working with us as a junior designer. This is how we call it in our mind, but she actually is a proper designer by now. Secondly, huge thanks to Eitan Nakash for doing a lot of work on italics development, and I think we would both go completely nuts if he wouldn't have helped with that. And thirdly, Marie, as mentioned, for all the amazing graphic design, because what is font worth if you can't see how it works? And seeing all of this implemented usage actually informed us even further how to correct a bunch of mistakes, how to improve more punctuation details, what is the kerning that is still not working, and so on. And this feedback literally comes from our clients very, very late, as they also work with the fonts. So thank you, guys.
We're grateful.
Yes.
Thank you so much. And thank you to all of you if you're listening today. It was an honor to be part of this.
Yay.
Really beautiful work as always, you two. Thank you for sharing a little bit about the behind the scenes process and this gorgeous typeface. Congrats on this big project.
Thank you.
All right, our next speaker, James Edmondson of Ono Type Co., calling in from California. Needs no introduction. We all know and love him, but I'm going to give it anyway. We first met James at a type conference many, many moons ago, and eventually when we started to make future fonts, we asked him to be a part of it to help out, and he generously helped us get started. He has unique talent in the type industry, both for his fun, spot-on typefaces, but also his warm, generous, funny, and charismatic heart and personality. He also just launched his book, which you should all pre-order, that he's been working on for the last 10 years. It's about running a studio and everything he knows about designing type. Again, you should pre-order it. So without further ado, Mr. James Edmondson.
Hello. Thank you for having me. I'm super psyched to be here talking with you all. And yeah, let's get into it. Thank you, Lizy and Travis, for the lovely introduction. It's a good thing to be a part of Future Fonts. It really does feel like a kind of family business. And this is a very special group of people. I'm stoked to be here. There's many of us who are going about our respective businesses alone. And I think that's really amazing. As designers, we're kind of participating in this unique field where we can be one person that's delivering really useful things to entire companies or like entire like major corporations. That kind of ratio of scale is super interesting to me and is a really beautiful thing, I think, about this business. I think it's great to be effective alone, but then we get very used to that. Or, you know, I get very used to that. This whole talk is basically my own experience. When we work alone, we don't have to have a commute anymore. We don't have to have like pointless meetings. There's so much time wasted when you have a job working for someone else. You know, working with coworkers can be nice, but there's just a ton of bullshit that goes along with it. It's incredible. I think with this idea of working alone comes the thought that we kind of get back to ourselves in a way and get back to the reasons why we started doing the things that we're doing now in the first place, which is to make art and make design. So that became my dream early on. I had only a little bit of experience working for my older brother, and I just saw how much time we would spend like interviewing someone or having meetings that could totally be emails or having to have a commute and all these things. They just seemed to take so much time away from what I actually wanted to be doing and what I was actually, you know, being paid to do. All the while I was working that job, I was going to art school, which was just a complete opposite experience from what I was doing on a day-to-day basis for my job. It was such a striking difference. I really wanted more of the art school thing. I never wanted to be in a pointless meeting again. Grad school was an opportunity to actually sustain the student lifestyle a little bit longer and try and learn as much about type design as I could. And we also got really good at going fast, which kind of became an addiction for me, is like this efficiency in drawing and working. So, yeah. We created so much work in such a short amount of time. And I kind of walked out addicted to that and addicted to fine European chocolate. And then I came home. And of course, there are no jobs. You know, you can't go online and start looking for type designer jobs. So it was very obvious for me to begin a career just as a freelancer or a one-person type foundry. There was no other option. And I still, in my life, have never gotten any job offers. I have, as an adult, I've never interviewed for a job anywhere. I have very little experience acting professionally. But I love working alone. And that's exactly what I would do as a kid. If I was left alone by my parents, I was just as happy to be playing with Lego in a room by myself. All of my interests were very solitary. I was surrounded by kids all the time. I have 5 older brothers, but I was just very comfortable working alone. As my love for working alone solidified, my fear of having teammates and being part of a team began to creep in more and more. And I got so used to doing it alone. This went on for years. And so you get all entrenched in those processes that you develop to run efficiently and be completely self-sufficient. I would find a way to make a decision and I would just repeat that and repeat that and repeat that over and over and over. Things had to be easy. They had to be fast. They had to be cheap. They had to be repeatable. So I start developing all these techniques to just kind of run as a one-person efficient type foundry. But it was tough. And then something would come up, like I would need to work on the website. And I'd realize that I actually needed to collaborate with somebody. Getting help was pretty tricky for some things. And I had so many attempts that didn't lead anywhere. The website was a big one. I just really struggled with this. I was getting help from a friend, and then I kind of felt like I was sort of taking advantage of that friend. And then we would get help from an actual web developer, and then they'd bail on the project, set us up with someone new. And we just kind of had this overturn. It wasn't really that fast, but looking back on it, we went through 4 or 5 different solutions and had a couple of false starts before we finally got some real progress. Websites are so hard. Maybe they're easier now, but in 2016, 2017, it was really tricky. It was disheartening and it's frustrating, and it just made me want to do it all by myself in a just very simple DIY, lo-fi sort of way. Eventually, we did find someone who was skilled and affordable. But then something else would come up where I would feel a little bit overwhelmed, or I'd feel like I was being asked to do something that was a little bit outside of my wheelhouse. And eventually the stress of running things, like I had been running things, began to eclipse the fear that I had of working with others. So that was sort of my turning point. And it all, of course, coincided with having children, which I just cannot overstate how much this has kind of changed my relationship with my job. Everything gets turned up to 11 when you have a kid, and you're tired and you're not always showing up as your best self. Things that used to be minor annoyances became completely overwhelming. And I started neglecting customer support requests, kind of getting sloppy in some other parts of the job, just simply because I was getting pulled in too many different directions. So yeah, having kids really changed things for me. I can't really say if it's changing things for the better or the worse with regards to my work. But yeah, it's just changed. I don't know. Maybe that's for someone else to decide. But I realized I needed a way to structure my business in a way that it could just keep going the way that it is forever. Sustainability. So while things were fine before I had kids, when I didn't need it to really generate too much and it could take up as much time as I wanted it to, that was now not going to work in my new reality. It's a classic problem. I needed more money and I needed more time. And those things always seem to kind of fight each other. So I slowly started opening myself up to the idea that I had been wrong about everything. This is something that as I get older, I'm getting more comfortable with, just opening myself up to the idea that everything I do now and think now is wrong. And just, yeah, what if I'm just completely backwards on all this stuff? So I got on Instagram and I posted a story that I was looking for some help. I was totally overwhelmed with the response. It was more than I ever thought. And we got our first part-time helpers, which was pretty much an immediate game changer. There is a lot of training in the beginning with anyone that comes on, but we invested a lot in that kind of early education. And so it was pretty quickly that Jamie and Lynn, who I hired at that time to work part-time, doing licensing and customer support things and some project management stuff, they were contributing in a meaningful way very quickly. Asking for help is one of the smartest things I've ever done. And it's not really that complicated. It's a lot easier than I expected because you don't need to hire someone full time. There's a lot of people that are looking for part-time work. The side gig thing just works for a lot more people than I ever would have thought. And a lot of people are good at things that I am terrible at. I'm such a dumbass sometimes. I just feel like, oh, everyone has the same interests that I do, or everyone has the same skill set that I do. Like, clearly everyone just wants to be drawing and designing type all day like I do. not true. Some people are really blessed in customer support and blessed in project management and love that organizational part of the job. So I also got to learn that those people were right there working with me. Jamie and Lynn were so good at the client hand-holding and so much nicer in emails than I ever was being, even for my own customers. Like, I want to supply incredible customer support. I want to be like Zappos level customer support. But it is not why I get out of bed in the morning either. So I have to kind of confront that reality. The experiment of getting help was a success. We grew. I learned how to elevate and delegate and train Jamie and Lynn more, let them figure out a ton on their own. I learned to trust employees and give them agency to solve their own problems. And it was a huge win, but we weren't really employing anyone yet. I didn't want to employ anyone full time until I knew we could do a great job with that. And that just meant having enough cash on hand to pay them a livable wage and to provide benefits. So that's a lot to ask. And I kind of thought when the right employee fell in my lap, I would explore that. Eventually that happened. Colin Ford was mostly on my radar because he had been casually DMing my wife every time she posted a cute picture of our kids. Colin would be like, "Oh, that's a nice picture." You know, he's just kind of a sweet guy in that way. And Sadie, my wife, said like, "Hey, what about Colin? What do you think he's someone that could kind of fulfill that role for you?" And I thought, yeah, that would be perfect actually, but he's working at Monotype. And so over the course of many months, we first did a test project where Colin worked on Onosofty, and eventually we got him to sign on full time for working at Ono. We now had the ability to kind of take on any sort of project we wanted, and it wasn't easy from there. There was a ton of stuff to figure out with benefits, and Colin moved from New York to New Jersey, and then there's a whole other set of paperwork. But for every problem that we run into, we find that there's someone who can help us out and someone who has experience in the very thing that we're struggling with. It's not really easy, but it's not super complicated either. Finally, hiring someone to help with the HR stuff has been huge. That has been a tricky one too, and we've had a little bit of turnover there. But now our team is big. We have a lawyer, we have web developers, we have an HR strategist that are all part-time. We have 3 full-time employees, 1 full-time contractor. So 3 people doing type design full-time. We have a CPA, an accountant, our 401k administrator, and I think that's about it. But we juggle each responsibility with who would be the best to handle it. We try and treat everyone really well so they never want to quit. I haven't had anyone quit yet, which I think is probably my greatest accomplishment. And yeah, to answer the question, me versus we wins for sure. To collaborate and to bring other people along with you in your creative journey and your business journey. I think it is very helpful to do it with others. You don't have to do everything yourself. And there's the old adage that if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. I think there's truth in that. But I also think there's an endless kind of spectrum between those two. And we don't always think about like, oh, we could hire someone for help 1 to 2 hours a week or something like that. And they might be able to do in those 2 hours what would take you an entire week. And it can always change on the fly. What you're committing to right now doesn't have to necessarily be what you're committing to next week. So my question for you, as you kind of navigate this choice, if you are, is has the overwhelm and stress eclipsed the fear and dread of working with others? Is there money to pay people? Are you set up to run indefinitely? I can't answer those questions for you, of course, but hopefully that can be a guide. And like Lizy said, we have a book coming out that's available for pre-order. And thank you for coming to my HyperTalk. Thank you, Travis and Lizy, and all the other speakers.
Thank you, James. Really great. And I think it's been interesting to have the graphic design perspective, type designers getting in the nuts and bolts, and then the business perspective, because I think that often gets overlooked. And it's a huge part of keeping forward and doing this full time and growing and being sustainable. So really appreciate that.
Right on. Yeah. Keep it going. Thanks, Lizy.
And inspirational. We need to hire some more help too.
All right. So thanks so much for tuning in to HyperTalks. It was a blast, and we are very excited for the next one. If you want to support us or the speakers, we have a huge library of amazing fonts, and it's at our new domain, future-fonts.com. And so go there, license some typefaces, or maybe purchase a bag of alphabet magnets featuring Reiner by Philipp Neumeyer. Yeah, and we've got a newsletter if you want to stay up to date. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, other social media.
And again, a huge thank you to all of our speakers for such creative, thoughtful, and generous talks, and sharing a little piece of what lights up your world.
And also shout out to Ellen Wilde of Each Other Studio. She helped design and brand the HyperTalks this year and did an amazing job. And also featuring the typeface Fig Grotesk by Typeji that we used throughout the branding.
And last, we hope you all have a wonderful weekend. Thank you for joining us wherever you may be. And yeah, have a great one. Thank you.
See you next year.
See you next year.